With Edge of Fate being the first expansion since the ending of the Light and Dark saga and the start of the Fate saga, there's a lot riding on this for Bungie and for the game of Destiny itself. With not only a new story, but also a full rework of armor, world tiers, and other changes to the game in its entirety, we're looking at a completely different game from what we have played back during the Light and Dark saga. Now, of course, with these reviews, I will be starting with the story of the campaign first, and then going everything else afterwards. Now, obviously, it has been a decent amount of time since the game came out, so again, I'll still give you the heads up of there being spoilers, but if you haven't cared about it or already played through it, you won't have to worry about it. But if you want to skip it, you can always check down below in the description for the timestamps on where you would be able to. First off, for the campaign, the story is surprisingly good. After the Light and Dark saga, I wasn't sure where they were going to go with the Fate saga, but the fact that we're dealing with the 9 on Kepler and also having more of an idea of how powerful of a force the 9 are does pique my interest more than I would have expected. Now, the introduction of Oort and Lodi does make it a little bit easier to see what it's like to be affected by the 9 in a more direct manner than what we have dealt with since the beginning of Destiny, utilizing the Courier of the 9, and also, for a limited time, you had the Trials of the 9 as well. Now, of course, going through this campaign on Legendary is always a preferred way of going through it because you feel that challenge. However, it felt a bit easier than the previous campaigns. Now, it did take a little bit of time. With all 13 side quests included, the campaign does take around 8 to 10 hours, which is usually a little bit longer than any of the previous expansions campaign, which does make sense since the story is trying to essentially start a new phase in Destiny's, Fate saga, and kind of making the building blocks set up at the beginning. Now, the pacing of the campaign is an improvement over the final shape, and it does flow very well. The plot twist of the 9 essentially making sure that Ikora dies, Lodi getting kidnapped, and both of them meeting on Kepler is just an insane thing to think about, since we never had any real idea of what the magnitude of power that we'll be dealing with after the Witness, since, the highest form that we dealt with was taken care of in the final shape. But now, with the 9 essentially being able to manipulate the future, create what it wants, we can safely say that we're dealing with a force that is possibly even bigger and closer to being Lovecraftian in nature, and rather than what we would kind of expect beforehand, which honestly I personally am very excited about. With how everything did start out, I really wonder how they're going to develop the story and see where they can really go with this, especially since we aren't really getting huge expansions in terms of, the details in the story as we would before. But with the amount that they have provided into this expansion for Edge of Fate, I'm curious on where they're going to go with this next. Now, one thing that I did also wanted to kind of bring up is the gameplay of the campaign itself. Now, it is a bit of an interesting circumstance because the world of Kepler introduces 3 different mechanics within the actual area that you get introduced to through the campaign. The Matter Spark, Matter Morph, and the Relocator. Now, they are also used for open world stuff so you can find secrets. However, a lot of the traversal that you have within the campaign is pretty much the way that you would need to get through the entire area. There's literally no way that you can get past a lot of the areas without utilizing one of these 3 things. And the issue is that it just becomes more repetitive over time. Now, of course, they do introduce them over, not all at once. You get introduced to one, and then the second one, and then the third one later down the line. However, as soon as they're introduced, they pretty much felt like spammed into every single movement encounter, every single, jumping puzzle, every single, transition area. It's always present. Either it's 1, 2, or it's all 3 in a certain combination. Now, it does feel at first really cool being able to be turned into a ball, or change the location, or being able to teleport through. But once you do it once or twice, it starts to get a little bit annoying because you're just doing it over and over again, and it's like, okay, great, now I need to look for this, or I have to do this now. And it doesn't really come to much of a benefit when it comes to that traversal stuff. Now, that being said, during the boss fights, they do get utilized in different formats, either to unlock a different way of starting up the damage phase, disabling shields, as well as being able to progress through the mechanics within those fights. However, again, it's the aspects of those that is very nice when it comes into it, because it's not just, oh, you gotta shoot the boss, then you shoot the ads, and then you shoot the boss again. You do have to do all these different things within it. And honestly, the fact that it's being brought in with the actual fight itself does make it a little bit more interesting, because instead of being focused exclusively on the actual mechanics of utilizing one of these three, systems, it's the boss fight, and then you're having those systems being used as kind of an accessory, making it a little bit easier for you to be distracted by the fight and not focus that much on the actual gameplay aspect of utilizing the mechanics. Now, overall, I think right now we're at a really good start in terms of the storyline, as well as to see where Bungie wants to move towards after the Light and Dark saga, as well as they did make it more open where they're bringing in some other things to come in, like for example Maya being part of it once more, but also keeping it open-ended, meaning that they're able to still explore it in different ways but still keep that mystery, instead of just being like, oh hey, we're gonna have just a cliffhanger and then just not have any reason to go further beyond that. So it does make it a little bit nicer when it comes to actually seeing where they can go with this. And I'm curious on where they will go when it comes to Renegades, because I know that Renegades is going to be a little bit different than what we're connected to. But again, we do want to see how they will be building off of this, especially since, again, we're starting up an entirely new saga that we haven't, dealt with since back during original Destiny in 2014. Now, focusing less on the campaign, we're actually going to be focusing on Kepler itself, the area. It is massive, big enough to have multiple transmat locations that you can land in, and each area is also very unique as it feels, as well as the resources that allow you to farm for specific weapons that you can select at the altar. There is the attunement that allows you to focus your loot on specific gear, as well as doing focused decoding, but you will need to complete specific quests to unlock those options through there. Now, you can adjust the world tier to increase the difficulty, as well as increase the quality of loot that you can get from tier 1 to tier 3 at base. However, it can increase the more that you play, depending on the power level when it comes to it. It is a better system than what it actually has, because it allows players to adjust it to their enjoyment, and also provides the gear benefits as well. The highest difficulty, however, of Mythic, I do have some issues with specifically. So unlike Legendary or Fabled, which is one higher, the damage needed to take down enemies is significant compared to the other two when it comes to the Mythic difficulty. So it's less of, oh, this is going to be a little bit more challenging, and more of, I'm going to sit in a corner and then just keep shooting until they die. Instead of actually having, it feels more aggressive, it feels more like they're coming at you, and it feels like, oh, you're in more danger. It literally is just, hey, we have Fabled levels of aggression, but you have to do like 2 to 3 times more damage to kill enemies, which doesn't really feel good when it comes to it. Especially if you're going through the Mythic missions, it then becomes a bit of an issue, because a lot of the times you will literally be just sitting in the corner, just shooting consistently at the boss from a far distance away, because 1, you have the ability to, and 2, if you go any closer, you essentially are asking to get hit, and since everything can one-shot you, it becomes more of a pain in the ass comparatively. Now, that's the one aspect that kind of has an issue. The other aspect is the tier system itself. Now, of course, like I said before, at base you can get, tier 1 to tier 3, but to get to tier 3, you need to do Mythic level stuff, which I find is a very, very big sell up compared to what you would get for tier 2 and tier 1. So, because again, you're dealing with Mythic level bosses and Mythic level enemies just to get tier 3. And the highest you can get for tier 3 is going to be that up until you reach pretty much 3/4 the way up to max power, which is going to be 450. And on top of that, once you get up to 450, a lot of the times you already are finding a different system to go into for the farm, for, you know, tier level gears or going into other endgame items. So it's a nice aspect that they have that you can utilize it. However, because the mythic level difficulty is so insane in terms of the damage output you have to provide, is that it becomes less of a reason to actually go and do such system. It makes the power grind effectively pointless, and the main issue when it comes to it is something I'm going to be talking about later on, but ultimately it just is more of a waste of time for you to kind of go through and, you know, get the achievements and get the seal. But then after that, there's other more efficient ways of getting your power up, and that is a lot easier comparative to going through and grinding out mythic level stuff. Now, since I did bring up the armor system, I do want to make this a focus of this review because, again, it does have a huge change from what it was back in Final Shape, as well as what it was during the Light and Dark Saga ever since Shadowkeep adjusted it in May 3.0. So the armor changes really came from its stats and the tiers of the gear that you would be able to get. So like I said before, instead of having armor being given a random number between 40 and 70 in a total stat value, depending on what the source of the armor piece is, it's sectioned between different tier levels, with tier 1 being the lowest, while tier 5 is being the best. They've also changed the way the armor stats are distributed and the benefits that you can get from them. So instead of the cap of your stats being up to 100, you now actually are able to get up to 200, which anything above that 100 point would be a better benefit. So like higher damage or, you know, faster regeneration, and it varies depending on what the skill is connected to. It allows you to be able to make more of the build crafting and spec more into those specific systems and get a higher benefit than what you would beforehand. Now, the change that this has is nice because it does give more of an incentive of the build crafting, meaning that you'll get a bigger benefit for going into a specific stat for 200 or even going beyond the 100 point because of those incentives of gain those extra heights, and also makes it much easier for you to be able to have a more fluid dynamic, because sometimes if you're based off of abilities, you'd be able to reduce your cooldowns, making you be able to utilize your melee, your dodge, and your other class abilities at a more often time. So it makes it a little bit easier instead of just having to hit like specific things back to back to back for it to work. You do have a little bit of leeway and does increase the flow for that. Now, on top of the actual tier system, there is a new system that's part of the armor, and that's the armor perks. Now, the perks themselves give benefits from improved healing to increased damage for kinetic weapons, depending on the number of items that you get from a specific set. Now, each do have a minor and major perk, 2 pieces that you would need to wear for the minor, and 4 pieces for the major. Now, you are able to utilize this aspect of it, especially since it only needs 4 and you don't need 5, so it does give you the opportunity to keep your exotic gear on, so you would be able to still utilize that aspect but not run out of having to go with just specifically legendary gear. Now, it is something that is just kind of used as an additional benefit, and it's not a huge part of the build crafting unless you really want to just kind of get the most out of it. So like if you're trying to go for a high damage and you want to focus down supers and, you know, weapons, there will be some that will allow you to be able to get additional damage for kinetic damage or for super, and again, it just varies depending on what you would want to do. Now, the build crafting is nice, but here's the main situation that comes into play, is the tier system itself. And that's actually where I want to go from here. Now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, the power leveling system and the portal activity system. Now, to kind of give a bit of a heads up on in regards to everything else, the way power leveling has changed is that instead of going to specific activities to get either tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or pinnacle level armor and gear to increase your power level, they made it so that every source is now an option to get more powerful gear. So there isn't any specific limitation where you have to do endgame gear to get the best stuff. You would be able to get it from any source imaginable, which is great in concept, since you don't have to always go and look to do raids or have to do grandmasters or have to do any of the endgame stuff to still gain your levels. You can just stick within the game mode that you like, which would be Crucible or Strikes or something of that sort, and from there you would be able to increase that. Now, that being said, obviously with the power level being reset essentially down to 0, you do start off from 0 going up to 200, and 200 is where the soft cap really is. And so what that usually is that you're able to do whatever you want, but until you hit that soft cap of 200, it doesn't really matter on what you do. Now, once you hit that, that is where the grinding really comes into play for the power leveling. Now, the way that it's supposed to work is through the portal. It replaces obviously the normal process and will allow you to be able to do your circumstances of what you want to do, either by utilizing the quick play option, which will allow you to select on, it will just send you into an event that you would want to do, or you would be able to customize the activity with difficulty modifiers to increase your score to get more powerful gear in higher tiers. Now, the way the tier levels work is that obviously at 200, at your base of the power leveling system, so to speak, you get tier 1, and an increase in tiers around every 50 levels that you go up. So at tier 2, you'll be seeing around 250, you'll start to get all the tier 2 stuff, and then at 300 you'll get the tier 3s, and then 350s you'll get the tier 4s, and so on and so forth. Now obviously the higher you go into those 50 levels, the more often you will get that gear. Now, the only situation that comes into play is the speed of your leveling really decreases fairly quickly. So for example, anytime that you go up, from 100 power level, it reduces the amount of power gain that you get per item. So for example, it could take you only a few hours to get from 0 to 200 because, you don't really have any limits. And then it may take you a day or so to get from 200 to 300. But the second that you hit that level 300, you'll realize that you will not gain as much per armor piece as you did beforehand. So then it does slow down a little bit. And then it increasingly slows down the higher the tier you go. So then once you get up to tier 4, which would be around the 350 mark, then it starts to kind of become a bit of a slog and a bit of a chore. The second you hit 400 though, good luck. Now, obviously the circumstances of this, so to speak, of this situation is that because it has been a little bit, because again, this video is coming out in, almost near the end of the year versus back in July, you can kind of see where the changes of this are happening. Now, the circumstances for this is that originally they said that they were going to reset your power back down to 200. So if you got to the maximum level and then, the next expansion comes out, boom, you're back down to 200. And so all that work that you got to get up to that point becomes essentially useless. And the only benefits that you got was that, now you have tier 5 gear. But at that point, if you have tier 5 gear, what's the use of actually going through and leveling up all the way to the top? Now, of course, they have been walking this stuff back over time, which is great, but also the fact that you have this sort of system in place originally is just not a fun time. Now, originally, when it comes to getting the tier 5 gear, they made it such a slog. To give you an idea, the second you hit 450, you can only go up if you get a tier 5 level armor piece. And that's the only time you'll get that. And it's very rare comparatively to everything else, to tier 4s, tier 3s, tier 2s, and all that stuff. Now, of course, with the updates that have come out since the start, they have made it a little bit easier, and obviously with the major update that came out with Ash and Iron, which again I'll talk about later on in the video, it does make it a little bit easier, but again, you still have to go through that massive slog of going from 200 to 300, then to 300, then to 400, then to 400, up to the max. So it's like 400 to 450 at the original, then they increase it up to 550, and then when Renegades comes out, it's going to be upgraded to 600. And so you see this type of circumstance, and you see these type of situations, and it's like, at this point, if you want to really go for the power leveling, instead of going for what you want to play, you're going to be going for the most efficient stuff to play. And on top of that, they also had something called unstable cores. They really made a bad decision with that back in the day. So bad that they're literally getting rid of it. The fact that they said that they're getting rid of it is just hilarious to me, because we got rid of legendary shards back, a while ago, and we're thinking, oh, okay, so since we got rid of legendary shards, it'll be a lot easier for us to infuse stuff. Nope. Now we had to worry about unstable cores, and then the unstable cores have like an exponential gain when it comes to infusing your stuff. So it could be very cheap from going from 100 to 200, but then the second you go from 200 to 300, it gets maybe twice the amount, or it goes even higher. It gets to the point where you're spending tens of thousands of unstable cores, which equates to you burning through just so much gear. So the circumstance of you wanting to go for the gear that you want makes it just a waste. So it makes everything beforehand irrelevant, because of course, for you to upgrade that system, you had to spend a shit ton of unstable cores, and at that point you're not going to really care about spending those unstable cores if you're just going to get the same thing later on or at a higher tier. So it really doesn't help to really have that. So it's either you want to hold on to that armor piece, hope that you're going to get a later one down the line, or just not bother with it and only focus on the build crafting afterwards, which again doesn't really help when it comes to those type of circumstances, because if the build crafting is happening at the end and you have to go all through this work to get there, it's a small reward comparatively to what you would be able to do beforehand, where you can kind of set up the build crafting ahead of time and then power up through that system back in, the Light and Dark saga. So you could kind of see how this feels like just a massive downgrade comparatively. Now, I think the last thing that we should be kind of bringing up is the Ash and Iron update, as it was a free-to-play update that was done last month and brought in a couple of things and also made the adjustments that we kind of referred to back in the other parts. So there was the increase of power from 450 to 550, and other activities were brought in. One called Reclaim, which was introduced to the portal, and also a new exotic mission called Heliostat that was brought in as well. We are able to get an exotic axe that does use the sword ammo, so to give you a bit of an idea, it's like you are able to get also everything pretty straightforward. There isn't any weekly system in place where you have to wait week 1, week 2, or week 3. You can get the weapon, craft it, and then also get all the intrinsics as well as all the actual exotic perks and catalysts taken care of as well. So it does make it a little bit easier when it comes to that type of situation, but the issue is, when it comes to this, is that this is possibly should be renamed as the recycled content update. And the reason why I say this is that all these activities are pretty much using recycled locations, and the exotic missions are using reused assets from previous exotic missions and also previous areas that, that we pretty much have known for a while. Like, for example, the final boss in the Heliostat mission is also the final boss from the Vaulted Strike of Tree of Probabilities. Now, focusing on just the new reclaim system, the locations that you are able to go through is just a combination of 4 possible locations, and you just go to 3 of them that are from the Plague Lands. But the problem is that the whole basis of the Plague Lands being the Siva tech, you really don't see any of it there. Like, it's all dead. And the Heliostat mission pretty much essentially just confirms it right there then, saying, oh, because Rasputin died, all the Siva is just done, and it's killed off. And you learn this not through subtle information or lore or anything that kind of would indicate, like, messages or stuff, like hidden items or hidden things. No, they just tell you within, like, literally when you're loading into the actual exotic mission. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, you could have had something that could have used Siva. Because, again, I think Siva is a really cool tech that can be brought in. I mean, we already have Outbreak Perfected involved. And also, we have so many other things that refer to Siva. Like, for example, the Vespers Host. It also takes into account of the Outbreak Perfected. And there's also, you see these different unique interactions when you have Outbreak Perfected or different type of Siva nanite systems. So the aspect of us not being able to have Siva at all at this point, other than Outbreak Perfected, is just the biggest middle finger when it comes to that, because it's dumb. You know, it's something that they could have done something with, but they decided, no, we're not going to. And it's just like, it's a cop-out when it comes to that type of situation. And the whole basis of the reclaim is to just stop the forces from getting war sats. War sats from a dead war AI. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, really? Like, this is just kind of just like, oh, hey, here's something that you can do just to kind of free the time and do something else instead of just running solo ops over and over again. But it just feels like they just ham-fisted it into the game, and there's really nothing else that's connected to it. Like, I shit you not, it's literally just the new story stuff that came up is there was an attack on the tower, and then you do the reclaim missions, and then you have the Heliostat exotic mission. That's it. Nothing else. It doesn't bring anything different. It doesn't really change much other than just increasing the power level and adding those 3 different reclaim versions, which one is Vex, Cabal, and the other one is Fallen, and then the exotic mission. So, again, like, the fact that this is, you know, I'm talking about it at this length is kind of insane to think about. Now, obviously, I was kind of giving the review and how my things, but I kind of wanted to just keep this in just so you guys have an understanding of how I feel about this expansion and also the major update. As much as I would want to give the credence for the storyline, it does not save this expansion at all. Edge of Fate is possibly the worst thing to happen to this game since the Destiny Content Vault happened back in Beyond Light. And even then, that insane move of the DCV makes a little bit more sense than what Bungie has done with this game. They have not only revamped the game, changed it from what we have been used to, but they have changed it in a way that it's worse than what it is. It makes the power grind more of a waste of time and a chore than you actually being able to get loot and increasing your power level. To give you an idea, the one thing that I didn't even talk about within the Kepler section of it is the fact that you are not in an open world area. That's the issue when one of the drawbacks that comes up when it comes to the whole tier level system. You do not see anyone at all. And that's a problem. On Neomuna, which came out 2 years prior, you are able to see other people in there, even if everyone is under 15 levels. In the final shape, even though you were not able to see everyone there, you could still matchmake into the areas to take care of the overthrows. In Kepler, it's either you're on your own or you're with your fire team. There's no there's no random people that you can just hang out with. There's no one that you would be able to just like do other stuff with. You just feel alone on your own. And the problem is that the way the power level system is set up and the way that everything is set up for the leveling, the tier system, the gear system. It rewards you for being efficient rather than you doing what you want to do. They make it so that instead of it being based off of the activity that you're doing, it's based off of what your power level is. And that is the absolute crux of my hatred for this. Because I enjoy raiding. I love raiding when it comes to it. For the longest time, I was the one that had the most raid completions in my clan up until recently. And the only reason why it's up until recently is because when Edge of Fate came out and Desert Perpetual came out, as soon as I did the first completion and then maybe did like 2 or 3 more, I couldn't find a group at all. Because either people have already done it back on reset day, which unfortunately I'm at work doing, or it's like no one is literally there to play it. No one wants to do it just casually done. There's people who will farm older raids, but again, those are when people want to farm those raids. Those are now just irrelevant. They don't exist anymore. They're not even part of the real focus at all with this. And so, on top of that aspect of it, is when the tier system is not an incentive to work with. If I'm having to grind all the way up to tier 5, I have to get from 200 all the way up to 400 to even get a chance of getting tier 5s. I haven't even hit 350. No, actually, change that. I did hit 350. And that was just because I was wanting to try out some of the events that were coming up. The Call to Arms, the Halloween event, etc., etc. So those got me up there. But the only problem is I haven't gone further than that. I am still within the 300s. The only way that I was able to get tier 5s is because every event gives you an extra tier from what you would get before. So usually I would get tier 4s. I would be able to get a tier 5 during the Halloween event or during the spring event, stuff like that. So that's the only way that I have been able to get tier 5s. It's not from raiding, it's not from doing endgame content, because guess what, if you want to go and do the Conqueror stuff, you have to get up to level. You can't just automatically gain access to it like you were before. You have to be at most 410 to reach every single one. And guess what? If it's also locked to a specific level. So if you are 300 and you decide to do something that you haven't done in a while, like you haven't gone through, you get one playthrough of it, and guess what? You don't get any benefits from it because it was at a lower level than what you're at. And on top of that aspect of it, you have to jump through so many fucking hoops to get Conqueror that it's just a waste of fucking time, because by the time that you try and go and get Conqueror done, when you get to 410, 90% of the time it's either you're burned out or you just like whatever, you're just doing it just to get it out of the way, and then you just stop playing. And so like you're not gonna really give a shit about the conquest activities in the end, unlike when the Grandmaster, where it's available immediately. Pretty much anyone that has access to it can play into it because it was properly scaled so that you would always be under 25, and it made it more of an entertaining engagement. And also, again, you get pinnacle stuff from that. From this, you don't. You just get it checked off and that's it. And it's just like, this is supposed to be a dawn of a new storyline for Destiny 2, and the circumstances when it comes to it is that, personally for me, I don't think Edge of Fate should have been connected to Destiny 2 at all. I think what they should have done is either have, a skeleton crew work on Destiny 2 just to kind of maintenance it and all that stuff for 2, 3, even the full 6 years. I would have no problem waiting 6 years for them to make a sequel to Destiny 2 for Destiny 3 and have all this. Because at that point, at least, if I was talking shit about Destiny 3, I at least still had the option to go back to Destiny 2 and play the original way that I wanted to. Not have everything that I liked beforehand just get removed or become irrelevant immediately, and having to deal with this slop shit that I'm now getting. And again, the story itself, like, you could have had such a really good opportunity to have a perfect launch point for a new game, because the death of the witness happened, so we're all good with that. You set up a really good story with the 9 being the new force, and then also kind of bringing some references back originally from Destiny 2 with having Maya being part of it. And they decided to stick with, instead of going with Destiny 3, they decided to revamp their entire formula that they had for Destiny 2, and then just have it where engagement time is the main focus. And that's just the biggest fucking middle finger to anyone who wanted to stick with the Fate saga. Because the thing that comes down to it is that if you wanted to see what the story is about, you have to deal with this fucking slog. You have no choice. The only issue is that for you to be able to check out the lore stuff, the different activities, the different incentives when it comes to it, you get pretty much nothing. Because you have to wait for the slog. You have to go through the grind. And the good part is, and the fact that you already have a lot of the walkback that's happening from the beginning of when they brought it up says a lot about how it is. To give you an idea, most of the players that would usually be playing during Final Shape, left after they killed off the witness. They don't care about the echoes. Light and Dark saga has been done. The story is completed. The people who stuck it out till the end to kill the witness, kill the witness. It's over. There's no reason to go back. So there's already a massive chunk of your player base gone away. On top of that, you have people who wanted to return but can't because you got rid of a lot of the stuff that really connected everything together. Like, you had the new light system. The new light system now it's whatever. There isn't really much there because the original new light system was the Red War that got DCV'd back in Beyond Light. That's all gone. You also have a lot of the other aspects that worked with this is all gone. And the problem that you have as well is that, again, you already reset the power of everyone. So again, you're starting off at a new baseline. Your weapons become practically useless unless you have specific roles and they specifically work for these type of situations, which is, again, another thing altogether. And then you set up the portal system to be literally a fucking mine. You go in, you run your solo ops missions for 8 hours a day trying to get your gear, and then you log off because guess what, there's nothing else to do. And now time and time again, there's been obviously low points followed by a resurgence because Bungie is able to lock in time and time again and be able to just recoup. For example, Vanilla Destiny to Forsaken, that's a big one. Lightfall to Final Shape, that's another big one, I would say. And then obviously we have Beyond Light and to Witch Queen, another one, a huge one. But the problem is that we have seen them walk back so many things that they have introduced that it's just there's so much that that just seems like it. Dude, they never really consider what the ramifications are at all. I don't know if this was because they wanted to stick with trying to maximize the amount of player interactive interactions that they have within it, because let's face it, if that's what they're always focusing on, this is a great fucking way to do it, because all you have to do is just hop in, do a run or two and then fuck off for the rest of the time. You could do that, that's fine, but it's still just the aspect of we need to have some sort of expectation there. And as of right now, we just got spat in the face by Bungie consistently over and over and over again, because the amount of stuff that they've done in Edge of Fate has killed it for a lot of players. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the lowest the amount of, concurrent players that have been playing Destiny 2 at all at this time. Now, obviously, again, we have only a few weeks until Renegades comes out, and at this point, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Because they've been kind of showing some stuff off. They've been giving us a roadmap recently that's showing it, and it does seem like they are understanding that they fucked up. So it's like, at least you guys acknowledged the problem, and it was what you guys done. However, the problem with that now is that what are we going with? What's going to be the next steps? And Renegades is going to be that marker where I'm not expecting them to essentially revert everything, bring it back to the original spot. No, that's not going to happen. What I want to see, though, and I really do want to see, is them making a meaningful move in the right direction. And all the recent announcements that they have done and everything is that they are showing that they're listening. They are realizing that they have fucked up. Getting rid of the unstable cores, making it a lot easier to infuse, making it actually affordable to infuse high-end gear if you want to. But I don't know how to feel at this point. Because at this point, when we always say it's a make or break, this might be it. Because beforehand, when we said make or break, it was Bungie at its own time, at its own point in the history of the game. Right now, they are being pressured by Sony to deliver. And if they do not deliver properly, it might be the end of Bungie, and it might be the end of Destiny 2. We don't know. Now, of course, as of right now, it's too early to really tell if they can make the right changes. Because again, they do have a new head involved, so we have some possibility of a directional change. The only issue is if the circumstances go in the right way. And so until we know that it's going to go that way, I don't know. I really don't. Because as of right now, my current rating for this is a fucking 3 out of 10 for this expansion. And that's also including the Ash and Irons update. Because all of it really being contributed just to the story that they've laid out the groundwork for is the only reason why I haven't given this anything lower. Because the gameplay elements that they have are very repetitive after they're introduced. The open world system just feels very empty, even though you do have the world tier system, which is kind of nice, but again, it just feels empty since you aren't playing with other people within that tier. And on top of that, you also have the portal, which is just a fucking eyesore of a system. On top of that, you have a shitty power level system connected to it, the tier armor system that's connected to it, and the amount of other missteps that they have made since the launch of Edge of Fate that they have to now walk back. Now, again, I'm not expecting miracles to be performed. I'm going to say that right now. My expectations are very low. As long as they are showing that they're making the step in the right direction, that's all I have for some hope. And the roadmap is indicating that they might be. But, with the countless layoffs that they have done at Bungie following the acquisition, we need to see this is the one real chance of trying to get in our good graces. If not, this is likely going to be the death of Destiny 2 and the death of Bungie at this point in time. If you're still watching this, I appreciate you dealing with my rant. It was just going over everything. It makes it more depressing on the fact of I don't play this game anymore. So as much as I used to, if anything. So there's that when it comes to that type of situation. But if you are still curious about this, if you want to see the full Let's Play of it and everything that I've done, check out the description down below for the playlist on that. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next review. Take care.